Millionaire sees black teacher humiliated for not having a car. The next day she gives him a surprise. Really, David? You still come to work by bus? Patricia's shrill laughter echoed through the Wilson Elementary School parking lot, drawing the attention of other teachers who were heading to their cars after a long school day. David Thompson, 34, adjusted the strap of his heavy backpack on his shoulder and continued walking toward the bus stop as if he hadn't heard the comment. But every word had pierced his chest like a sharp blade, especially coming from a colleague he considered respectful. "Pat, leave the man alone," Jessica muttered, though her voice carried no real conviction. She herself looked at David with a mixture of pity and superiority as she unlocked her shiny blue BMW. "No guys, I'm serious," Patricia continued, now speaking loudly enough for half the parking lot to hear. "How can a college professor, with a doctorate and everything, not even be able to buy a used car? I mean, for God's sake, my 16-year-old son has a better car than—" She paused dramatically. "Oh right. He doesn't have one." David stopped in the middle of the parking lot. His hands, calloused from carrying heavy books and school supplies every day, clenched into discreet fists. He had dedicated the last 8 years of his life to that school, teaching math to elementary school children with a passion that few could match. He arrived an hour early every day to give free tutoring lessons and stayed late to help struggling students. "You know that's not how it works," David finally said, turning to face them. His voice was calm, but there was something in his brown eyes that made Patricia instinctively take a step back. "What do you mean, that's not how it works?" Patricia retorted, crossing her arms over her chest. "David, you have a master's degree, a doctorate, you've been working here for years. What's your excuse?" What they didn't know was that David sent half his salary every month to his diabetic mother in Alabama, who needed expensive medication that her health insurance didn't cover. What they didn't know was that he had used his savings to pay for his younger brother's emergency heart surgery last year. What they didn't know was that David Thompson had deliberately chosen to prioritize other people's lives over his own material comfort. "My excuse," David repeated slowly, "is that some things are more important than appearances." The conversation was interrupted by the powerful roar of an engine. A black Bentley was parked near the school entrance, and an elegant woman stepped out of the passenger seat. Catherine Williams, 52, was one of the most influential people in town, a millionaire, philanthropist, and member of the school board. She had arrived for a meeting with the principal about donations to the library. Catherine had witnessed the entire scene. Her blue eyes watched David with an intensity that no one else in the parking lot noticed. There was something about his quiet dignity, the way he maintained his composure even in the face of public humiliation, that stirred a painful memory in her own history. "I'll see you tomorrow," David said, resuming his walk toward the bus stop. Patricia and Jessica returned to their cars, already laughing about something else, as if they hadn't just publicly humiliated a colleague. Catherine stood still beside her Bentley, watching David sit down on the cold metal bench at the bus stop. She saw him open his backpack and take out a stack of tests to grade. Even after a full day at work, he would continue working during his commute home. For a moment, their eyes met across the parking lot. David waved politely, as he always did when he saw a member of the school board. Catherine waved back, but her mind was already working at full speed, formulating a plan that would completely change the life of this extraordinary man. What David didn't know was that his life was about to take a completely different turn. What his cruel colleagues didn't realize was that their little display of superiority had just been witnessed by the wrong person. And what no one in the parking lot could have predicted was that this moment of humiliation would become the catalyst for a change that would leave everyone completely shocked. As the bus arrived and David climbed the worn steps, Catherine watched with fierce determination shining in her eyes. Some injustices could not go unnoticed, and she was about to prove it. If this story of overcoming adversity and justice is touching your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to find out how a simple act of humiliation would turn into a lesson those teachers would never forget. Bus number 47 rattled through the streets as David corrected math tests, balancing the papers on his lap while holding onto the handrail. Next to him, an elderly lady commented on how the prices of medicines had gone up again. David nodded sympathetically. He knew this reality well. The next day, the humiliation in the parking lot spread through the school like wildfire. During break time, David passed by the teacher's lounge and found Patricia whispering to a group of colleagues, who immediately fell silent when he entered. "Oh, hi David," Patricia said with a fake smile. "We were talking about the collection for Mrs. Johnson's retirement gift. Are you going to contribute or—" She paused dramatically. Are you a little tight this month? The silence in the room was deafening. Jessica chuckled softly as she fiddled with her phone. Maybe we can start a collection for David too, she muttered loudly enough for everyone to hear. So he can at least get a bike. David opened his wallet and put $20 in the envelope, the money he had set aside for lunch for the week. Mrs. Johnson deserves this and much more, he said calmly. She has dedicated 40 years to educating children. What his classmates didn't know was that David had grown up in Detroit, the son of a cleaning lady and a mechanic who lost his job when the factories closed. He had studied on scholarships, working 2 jobs during college, sleeping 3 hours a night to keep his grades high. Every dollar he earned had a specific destination: $800 a month for his mother's insulin, $600 for his brother's heart medication, and the rest to survive. Meanwhile, in the principal's office, Catherine Williams finished signing a $50,000 check for the library renovation. But her mind was completely focused on the scene she had witnessed the day before. Mrs. Patterson, Catherine called her personal assistant on her cell phone. I need some information about a teacher at Wilson Elementary. David Thompson. I want to know everything about him, where he lives, his family situation, his needs. Discreetly. What had stirred something deep within Catherine was a painful memory from 30 years ago. She had grown up in a wealthy family, but her father had lost everything in bad investments when she was 22. Suddenly, the spoiled socialite found herself working as a sales clerk in a department store, humiliated daily by customers who had once greeted her at charity events. It was during that dark period that a kind manager, a black man named Robert, had given her a chance when no one else would hire her. He saw her potential beyond her temporary social decline, taught her about sales, negotiation, and most importantly, dignity in the face of adversity. Robert had been her secret mentor as she rebuilt her life. Information collected, Mrs. Williams, Mrs. Patterson said an hour later. David Thompson, 34, Ph.D. in mathematics education from the University of Michigan. Lives alone in a 1-bedroom apartment on the east side of town. Regularly sends money to family in Alabama. Has worked at Wilson for 8 years, never missed a day, voluntarily stays for extra classes. Students adore him, he has the best math grades in the district. Catherine smiled slightly. Just as she had suspected. That afternoon, while David waited for the bus again, Patricia and Jessica drove by in their cars, honking and laughing. Jessica even filmed him waiting at the bus stop and posted it on her Instagram stories with the caption, "Some people never get anywhere." Literally. The post received likes from several teachers at the school and cruel comments about people who don't try hard enough. David saw it all on the cell phone of a student who was proudly showing off that his English teacher was famous on Instagram. But what Patricia and Jessica didn't know was that their petty cruelties were being carefully observed and documented. Catherine had instructed Mrs. Patterson to keep records of everything, every public comment, every humiliation, every display of prejudice disguised as concern. Mrs. Patterson, I want you to also investigate the financial situations of teachers Patricia Hammond and Jessica Mitchell. Salaries, lifestyle, conspicuous spending. Everything, Catherine instructed over the phone as she watched David get on the bus from her office window. That evening, David was grading papers when he received a call from his mother. David, dear, the pharmacy said the plan will no longer cover the new insulin. They're going back to the old one, but you know it doesn't control my diabetes well. David closed his eyes. The new insulin cost an extra $400 a month, money he simply didn't have. Don't worry, Mom. I'll figure something out, he lied, already calculating which meals he could cut to make up the difference. The next day, the situation worsened. Patricia had convinced the principal that David looked too tired to teach extra classes, suggesting that perhaps he needed to focus on resolving his personal issues first. The paid extra classes that David depended on to supplement his income were suspended. It's for the good of the students, the principal explained awkwardly. Maybe when you're more established, we can reconsider. David nodded politely, but his fists clenched discreetly. Established. The word echoed in his mind like an insult disguised as advice. What no one at the school realized was that David Thompson wasn't just a dedicated teacher, he was a man who had survived adversity that would have broken weaker people. Each humiliation only fueled something inside him, a quiet determination forged on the tough streets of Detroit and refined by years of academic struggle. As he walked to the bus stop that afternoon, the weight of financial worries pressing on his shoulders, David didn't know that his life was about to change dramatically. Catherine Williams had finished her investigation and was ready to execute a plan that would not only change David's life, but teach the entire school a lesson in respect that would never be forgotten. Each new humiliation only strengthened something inside him that his oppressors couldn't see, a quiet strength fueled by the very injustice they tried to impose. What those privileged people didn't know was that every act of contempt was writing their own sentence, and that the most powerful woman in town had decided to be the executor of that justice. Catherine Williams was not a woman who made impulsive decisions. After 3 decades of building a business empire, she had learned that true justice required strategy, not just outrage. That Thursday morning, she arrived at Wilson Elementary an hour before the usual time, carrying an elegant leather briefcase and a determination that would make mountains tremble. "Mrs. Patterson has prepared all the reports I requested," she said on the phone as she walked through the empty school hallways. "I want to know exactly how much each teacher earns, their expenses, their social networks, everything. Especially Patricia Hammond and Jessica Mitchell." David had arrived early, as usual, to prepare material for his remedial students, the ones Patricia had managed to cancel. He didn't know he was being watched as he carefully organized math problems at different levels of difficulty, even though he knew he was no longer officially allowed to teach these classes. "Interesting," Catherine murmured, watching through the classroom window. "A man who works even when he's not paid." At that very moment, Patricia was posting another story on Instagram, a photo of her new $3,000 Louis Vuitton bag, with the caption, "Treating myself like I deserve." What she didn't know was that Mrs. Patterson was taking screenshots of every extravagant post. David's situation was getting worse every day. The day before, he had received an eviction notice. He was 3 months behind on rent after using his savings for his brother's emergency surgery. Now, without the extra classes that supplemented his income, the cruel math of his finances didn't add up. "David, can I talk to you?" Jessica had appeared at the classroom door with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "The principal wants to talk about your situation. It seems that some parents are concerned about whether a teacher who can't even support himself financially should be educating their children." David slowly closed the book he was preparing. "Which parents, specifically?" "Oh, you know how it is. People talk, comments spread," Jessica shrugged theatrically. "Maybe it's time to consider other career options. Something more suited to your profile." What Jessica didn't realize was that Catherine was in the hallway, recording every word on her discreet tape recorder. What she also didn't know was that there were no real complaints from parents. Jessica had made it all up to pressure David into resigning. That same day, during lunch, David received an unexpected call. "Professor Thompson? This is Catherine Williams from the school board. I'd like to talk to you about a special opportunity. Can you meet me at the Starbucks on Main Street at 4 p.m.? David hesitated. He knew Catherine's reputation: ruthless businesswoman, powerful philanthropist. "May I ask what it's about?" "About giving our most disadvantaged students exactly the kind of education they deserve. And about rewarding teachers who are truly dedicated." Meanwhile, Patricia was in the teacher's lounge telling a growing group of colleagues how she had researched David's finances on social media. "Did you see that he lives in that housing complex on the east side? And uses discount coupons at the supermarket? Like, how can someone like that teach our kids math when he can't even do the math in his own life?" The group laughed nervously. Some teachers began to feel uncomfortable with the cruelty, but no one had the courage to confront Patricia directly. "And you know what I found out?" Patricia lowered her voice conspiratorially. "He sends money to his family in Alabama. Just imagine, a grown man who still has to support his relatives. What a lack of ambition." What none of them knew was that in the next room, a small tape recorder that Catherine had strategically placed was capturing every poisonous word. At 4 p.m., David walked into Starbucks and immediately recognized Catherine sitting at a table in the corner. She was elegantly dressed, but her smile was genuinely warm. "Professor Thompson, thank you for coming. You can call me Catherine." She gestured for him to sit down. "I already ordered a coffee for you, double espresso, no sugar. I hope it's to your liking." David watched her curiously as he sat down. "How do you know how I take my coffee?" Catherine smiled mysteriously. "Let's just say I've been observing the dedication of certain teachers very closely." She leaned forward, lowering her voice. "David, may I call you David? I need you to know that what's happening to me at Wilson Elementary has not gone unnoticed by me. I don't understand. The humiliations. The cruel comments. The suspension of your extra classes based on lies. Catherine opened an elegant folder. I've documented everything. David swallowed hard. You've been watching me. Watching injustices. And deciding what to do about them. Catherine slid a document across the table. This is a proposal for a new math tutoring program I'm funding. Salary of $85,000 per year, plus benefits. Interested? David stared at the document with wide eyes. It was more than double what he currently earned. Why? Because I recognize excellence when I see it. Because I believe education should be about transforming lives, not about who has the most expensive car in the parking lot. Catherine leaned back in her chair. And because some people need to learn that underestimating others has consequences. I don't understand what's going on. Catherine smiled with something David couldn't quite identify. Justice is happening, David. But first, I need you to trust me. I need you to continue acting normally at school for a few more weeks while I prepare a few things. What kind of things? The kind of things that will teach certain people that dignity is priceless, and that humiliating others can be the most expensive mistake of their lives. David felt his heart race. There was something in the intensity of Catherine's blue eyes that told him she wasn't just a well-meaning philanthropist. There was something deeper, more personal. Why are you doing this for me? He finally asked. Catherine was silent for a long moment, her eyes lost in a distant memory. Because many years ago, when I was at my worst, someone like you gave me a chance when no one else would. And because I've learned that the best way to honor those people is to pass on the kindness. She stood up, extending her hand to David. So, are you with me? David looked at her outstretched hand, then into Catherine's determined eyes. For the first time in months, he felt something he had almost forgotten: hope. I am, he said, squeezing her hand. Great. Now, David, keep being exactly who you are. Keep being humble, kind, and dedicated. Because soon, everyone will see that these qualities are not signs of weakness. Catherine smiled with an intensity that made David realize he had completely underestimated what was about to happen. They are signs of a strength that some people will never understand, until it's too late. As he left the cafe that afternoon, David had no idea that in the coming weeks his life would change in ways he could not have imagined. What he also didn't know was that Patricia and Jessica were about to discover that humiliating a good man in front of the wrong woman could be the last mistake someone ever makes in their life. The following Monday, David arrived at Wilson Elementary as he always did, an hour early, ready to give his best to the students. What he didn't expect was to find a black Bentley parked in the principal's spot and unusual activity in the administrative office. Catherine Williams had arrived at 6:30 a.m. with a leather briefcase, 2 lawyers, and a determination that would shake the building. Good morning, Mrs. Henderson. The principal greeted her with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. We need to talk urgently about serious disciplinary issues involving 2 members of your faculty. The principal paled. In her 15 years of school administration, she had never seen Catherine Williams so seriously formal. Of course, Mrs. Williams. What is it about? Catherine opened her briefcase with deliberately slow movements. Systematic bullying, discrimination, creation of a hostile work environment, and potential defamation. She placed a stack of printed documents on the table. All duly documented, recorded, and legally validated. At that very moment, Patricia was pulling into the parking lot in her BMW, posting another Instagram story about "Blessed Monday with my beautiful car," when she received a message from the secretary: "Report to the principal's office immediately. Urgent." Jessica received the same message while applying another coat of expensive lipstick in the rearview mirror of her Audi. "Damn it," she muttered, imagining it was some boring meeting about the school budget. When they both entered the office and saw Catherine Williams sitting at the table with 2 men in suits, the air seemed to rush out of their lungs. Catherine wasn't just a wealthy donor, she was the person who controlled 60% of the school's funding. "Sit down," said Catherine, her voice sharp as glass. "We have a lot to discuss." Patricia tried to smile, but something in Catherine's icy expression made her swallow her words. "Mrs. Williams, how nice to see you. I hope everything is going well with..." Silence. Catherine activated a small tape recorder in the center of the table. Do you recognize your own voices? The sound that came out of the device was like a nightmare coming true. Really, David? You still take the bus to work? How can a university professor, with a PhD and everything, not even be able to buy a used car? My 16-year-old son has a better car than... Oh right. He doesn't have one. Maybe we can start a collection for David too, so he can at least get a bicycle. Patricia felt her hands start to sweat. Jessica stared at the recorder as if she could make it disappear with the power of her mind. This recording, Catherine continued relentlessly, was made in the parking lot of this school last week. But it doesn't stop there. She placed another stack of papers on the table. Screenshots from your social media accounts publicly mocking a coworker. Posts about people who don't try hard enough. Stories secretly filming a teacher waiting for public transportation. Jessica tried to defend herself. Mrs. Williams, it was just a joke between colleagues, we didn't. A joke. Catherine stood up, her presence completely dominating the room. Let's hear more of this joke. Another audio clip began to play. Some parents are concerned that a teacher who can't even support themselves financially should be educating their children. Maybe it's time to consider other career options. Something more suited to your profile. Jessica's face turned red as a tomato. She had made up that story about complaints from parents, and now it was documented forever. Dr. Martinez, Catherine addressed one of the lawyers, can you explain to the teachers the legal implications of what we just heard? The lawyer opened an elegant briefcase. We have here clear cases of moral harassment, socioeconomic discrimination, creation of a hostile work environment, and defamation. Each of these offenses can result in dismissal for just cause, civil lawsuits, and moral damages that can reach six-figure amounts. Patricia finally found her voice, which came out as a desperate cry. We didn't do anything illegal. It was just normal conversation between colleagues. Catherine smiled with arctic coldness. Normal conversation? Then let's look at your expenses, since you were so concerned about your colleagues' finances. She opened another folder. Patricia Hammond. Annual salary, $52,000. Monthly expenses on luxury items documented on social media. Louis Vuitton bag, $3,000. Christian Louboutin shoes, $1,200. Beauty treatments, $800 per month. Patricia opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Jessica Mitchell. Annual salary, $49,000. Car financed in 84 installments. Monthly payment of $750. Apartment rented above her means, $2,200 per month. Credit card debt to keep up appearances, $23,000. Catherine leaned back in her chair, watching the devastation on their faces. Ironic, isn't it? You mocked a man who sends money to his sick family while you're up to your necks in debt to finance a lifestyle you can't sustain. The principal, who had remained in shocked silence, finally spoke. Mrs. Williams, what is your recommendation? Immediate dismissal for just cause. Both of them. Catherine placed more documents on the table. And there's more. I've been investigating the cancellation of Professor Thompson's extra classes. I discovered that it was based on Jessica's deliberate lies about non-existent complaints from parents. Jessica began to cry. Please, I have bills to pay, I can't lose my job. You should have thought about that before trying to destroy an innocent man's career, Catherine replied without a shred of compassion. At that moment, there was a knock at the door. David entered, confused that he had been called during his class. Sorry to interrupt, but they said it was urgent. Catherine smiled, the first genuine smile of the morning. David, please sit down. These two ladies have a few things to tell you. Patricia and Jessica looked at David, then at Catherine, finally realizing that they had been completely defeated. Their arrogance had disappeared, replaced by pure panic. Professor Thompson, Catherine said, I would like to officially announce your new position as coordinator of the Mathematics Excellence Program at this school, with a salary of $85,000 per year and full benefits. The program will be funded entirely by my foundation. David looked around the room, slowly processing what was happening. Patricia was crying openly. Jessica was desperately trying to wipe the tears from her face. As for your former colleagues, Catherine continued, They have just been terminated for cause due to documented discriminatory and unprofessional behavior. She turned to the two devastated women. You have 24 hours to clear out your offices and turn in your keys. When Patricia tried to speak, Catherine raised her hand. Your words have caused enough damage. Now it's time for consequences. As the two former teachers left the room in utter humiliation, Catherine turned to David with a motherly smile. Welcome to your new position, Coordinator Thompson. David was still in shock, but for the first time in years, he felt something he had almost forgotten: true justice being served. In the hallway, the sound of Patricia sobbing and Jessica arguing on the phone with the bank about delays in car financing echoed like a symphony of long-awaited consequences. Some people go through life without learning that dignity is priceless, Catherine said, watching the two women walk downcast through the parking lot from the windows. But today, they finally learned that underestimating others can be the most expensive mistake of their lives. What neither of them could have imagined was that this was only the first part of a much bigger plan, because when you mess with the wrong person, the consequences go far beyond what any cruel mind could predict. 6 months later, David Thompson was promoted to assistant principal at Wilson Elementary, with a salary of $120,000. His mother received the best diabetes treatment money could buy, and his brother made a full recovery. Patricia was fired from 3 consecutive jobs. Her reputation for bullying haunted her through professional references. Jessica lost her expensive apartment and had to sell her Audi to pay off accumulated debts. When they ran into David in town, he always greeted them politely, without showing any resentment. His elegance reminded them daily of how they had underestimated an extraordinary man. Catherine Williams often visited the school, proud to see David transforming young lives with his passion for education. She had learned that true justice does not come from cruel revenge, but from elevating those who deserve it while natural consequences befall those who do evil. The best revenge, David always told his students, is not to destroy your enemies, but to build something so great that it makes it impossible for them to ignore your greatness. If this story of overcoming adversity touched your heart, subscribe to the channel for more stories that prove that dignity and perseverance always triumph over cruelty and prejudice.